All right, guys, we are continuing our season predictions. Today is going to be the Pitt Panthers and the Tennessee Volunteers. Let's go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me again, Golden Blue Dude. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. I do college football videos every single day. Don't forget to check out my friends at Tri-State Wood Sketch. All you have to do is send him a picture, and he'll turn it into a beautiful piece of art on wood. Check out his website at www.tristatewoodssketch.com. Tell him Golden Blue Dude sent you, and you'll get 20% off. Right now, I'm in the middle of my season predictions. I'm on teams 27 and 28, and they just so happen to be the Pitt Panthers and the Tennessee Volunteers. Yes, I'm a West Virginia fan, and yes, I hate Pitt. With the passion. But whenever I do my season predictions, I try to keep my bias out of it and try to give a straightforward prediction of how I think these two teams will finish. First, we'll start off with Pitt. They actually have a preseason ranking of 39. That's not bad. Last year, they finished the season 6-5, 7th in the ACC because the ACC had no divisions. We're going to talk about Pitt's offense first. They only had one key loss, really, and that was wide receiver Maurice French. Pitt's offensive line might end up being one of the best in the ACC in 2021. Last year, they averaged 29 points per game and 379.8 yards a game. Now, as usual, both of these rosters have tricky name pronunciations, so I probably will mispronounce some names. Starting with Pitt's quarterback, Kenny Pickett. Last year, he was 203 for 332. That's 61.1%. Threw for 2,408 yards, 13 touchdowns, but 9 interceptions. He's got to cut back on those interceptions. Pitt's running game still a work in progress, but I do think it'll be better. Running back Vincent Davis, 143 carries for 632 yards. That's 4.4 yards a carry and 6 touchdowns. But I think the passing game is where it's at for Pitt's offense. Here's their wide receiving core. Wide receiver Shockey Jacquez Lewis, 26 receptions for 327 yards. Wide receiver Tayser Mack, 23 receptions for 305 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver Jordan Addison, 60 receptions for 660 yards and 4 touchdowns. Wide receiver Jalen Barden, 7 receptions for 140 yards and 1 touchdown. Wide receiver Jared Wayne, 21 receptions for 326 yards and 1 touchdown. And wide receiver Trey Tipton, 11 receptions for 104 yards. So as you can see, they still have a lot of production coming back on the wide receiving core. If the offensive line can protect Kenny Pickett more than they did last year, and I think they will, Pitt should have an offense that ranks in the top 5 in the ACC. Now look at Pitt's defense. Pitt actually has a pretty good defense. They have 8 starters back on that side of the ball, a ton of production. Last year, they were number 1 in sacks, 9th in tackles for a loss, 12th in rushing yards allowed, and 15th in total yards allowed. So yeah, a legitimate defense. Overall, they allowed 24.5 points per game, that's 37th, and allowed 339.5 yards a game. Here's a look at their front 7, starting with their defensive line. Defensive end Deslin Alexandre, 18 tackles, 12 by himself, 3 sacks, and 2 pass deflections. Defensive tackle Devin Danielson, 19 tackles, 6 by himself, and 2 sacks. Defensive tackle Kalesia Cansey, 27 tackles, 12 by himself, 1.5 sacks, and 2 pass deflections. Defensive end John Morgan III, 12 tackles, 8 by himself, 4 sacks. Now the linebacking core. Linebacker Phil Campbell III, 41 tackles, 22 by himself, 4.5 sacks. Linebacker Chase Pine, 43 tackles, 27 by himself, 1.5 sacks, 2 pass deflections. And linebacker Cam Bright, 50 tackles, 31 by himself, 4.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 1 pass deflection. Now let's look at Pitt's secondary. Pitt might have one of the best secondaries in the ACC and a top 10 in the nation. Starting with their quarterbacks. Quarterback Marquise Williams, 22 tackles, 16 by himself, 2 interceptions, and 4 pass deflections. Cornerback AJ Woods, 17 tackles, 15 by himself, 1 interception, and 2 pass deflections. Free safety Eric Hallett II, 29 tackles, 20 by himself, 2 interceptions, and 4 pass deflections. Strong safety Brandon Hill, 24 tackles, 15 by himself, 2 forced fumbles, 1 interception, and 1 pass deflection. Pitt also has a very manageable schedule in 2021. Honestly, I think they have 6 gimme games and a few toss-up games. I think Pitt will get to a nice bowl and finish in the top 4 in the ACC Coastal. Here's a look at Pitt's 2021 college football schedule. First, they start off the season with a home game against UMass. Win. Then they go on the road to Tennessee. I'll predict that game at the end of this video. They get Western Michigan at home. Win. New Hampshire at home. Win. At Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech will be improved. Win. Then they get their bye week. Then a road trip to Virginia Tech. Win. Then they get Clemson at home. That's a loss. Then they get Miami at home. That's a loss. At Duke. Win. North Carolina at home. Loss. They get Virginia at home. Virginia will be much improved, but at least they don't have to go on the road. I'll give them a win. And then at Syracuse. Win. So depending on that Tennessee prediction, I have Pitt going either 8-4 or 9-3. Next up is the train wreck known as Tennessee. They have a preseason ranking of of 56. I think that's way too high. 3-7, 5th in the SEC East. Head coach Jeremy Pruitt was fired because of an ongoing NCAA investigation involving recruiting violations. And oh yeah, Tennessee was headed in the wrong direction. They hired Josh Heupel to replace him. At UCF, he went 28-8 in 3 seasons, so that looks like a decent hire. First, we're going to talk about Tennessee's offense. Tennessee lost a ton of production via the transfer. There's way too many names to list, so I'm not going to try to do it. But we will start off with the transfer quarterback from Virginia Tech, quarterback Hendon Hooker. Last year, he was 99 for 150, that's 65.3%, threw for 1,339 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Dual threat quarterback, 120 carries for 620 yards, that's 5.2 yards a carry, and 9 touchdowns. Tennessee might have a halfway decent running game if the offensive line can actually block. Starting with running back Jabari Small, 26 carries for 117 yards, 4.1 yards a carry. Incoming 4-star recruit, running back Tyon Evans. He's 5'11", 220 pounds. Now let's look at Tennessee's passing game, starting with their tight end. Tight end Princeton Fant, 12 receptions for 103 yards and 1 touchdown. Now their wide receiving core. Wide receiver Cedric Tillman, 3 receptions for 67 yards, 1 touchdown. Wide receiver Jalen Hyatt, 20 receptions for 276 yards, 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver Velez Jones Jr., 22 receptions, 280 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Wide receiver Ramel Keaton, 9 receptions for 76 yards. Wide receiver Jimmy Callaway, 2 receptions for 20 yards. Incoming 4-star recruit, wide receiver Walker Merrill. He's 6'1" and 190 pounds. I think Tennessee's offense is going to be in the bottom half of the entire SEC. Now let's look at their defense. Tennessee has a lot of catching up to do on the defensive side of the ball as well. Right now, it's definitely not an SEC caliber type of defense. And the linebacking position got decimated by the transfer portal. Here's a look at their front 7, starting with their defensive line. Defensive end Latrell Bumpus, 14 tackles, 4 by himself, 1 sack. Defensive tackle Matthew Butler, 43 tackles, 22 by himself, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 1 pass deflection. Defensive tackle Elijah Simmons, 10 tackles, 2 by himself, 1 pass deflection. Now the linebacking core. Linebacker Tyler Barron, 21 tackles, 13 by himself, 1 sack. Linebacker Jeremy Banks, 28 tackles, 13 by himself. Linebacker Roman Harrison, 7 tackles, 5 by himself, and 2 sacks. And then the nickelback Theo Jackson, 31 tackles, 19 by himself, 1 interception, and 2 pass deflections. I think Tennessee's secondary will most definitely be the strength of this defense, starting with their cornerbacks. Cornerback Alontae Taylor, 29 tackles, 22 by himself, 1 interception, 4 pass deflections. Cornerback Warren Burrell, 17 tackles, 15 by himself, 1 pass deflection. Free safety Jalen McCullough, 43 tackles, 29 by himself, 2 pass deflections. And strong safety Trevin Flowers, 63 tackles, 37 by himself, 1 forced fumble, and 3 pass deflections. The defensive line has experience filled with seniors, but they have to be better than what they were last year. There will definitely be an adjustment period for head coach Josh Heupel. Prepare for a bad season, Tennessee fans, but hopefully you got the right coach this time. Let's take a look at Tennessee's 2021 college football schedule. First, they get Bowling Green at home. This could be a closer game than people realize, but I'm giving Tennessee a win. Then they get Pitt at home. I'll predict that game here in just a minute. Then they get Tennessee Tech at home. Win. At Florida. Loss. At Missouri. Loss. South Carolina at home. Win. Ole Miss at home. Loss. At Alabama. Big loss. Then they get their bye week. At Kentucky. Loss. Georgia at home. Loss. South Alabama at home. Win. And Vanderbilt at home. Win. So depending on the Pitt prediction, I have Tennessee going either 6-6 or 5-7. Now for the actual game prediction itself. Pitt at Tennessee. Guys, one thing's for sure. Tennessee is going to need a lot of help from their home field crowd because Pitt is the better team. Pitt's going to have a top 20 defense easily. You're going to be able to stuff the run, and they like to turn you over. Tennessee's offense is going to be anemic this year. Hendon Hooker might be the only bright spot for this Tennessee team. As a West Virginia fan, I reluctantly think that Pitt's going to win this game. I think the final score is going to be 34-27. I just think Pitt has way too good of a defense for Tennessee, and Pitt's offense will take a step forward this year. Tennessee is just outmatched in this game. I wish I could call a win for Tennessee. Trust me, I wish I could. But the Volunteers are just plain outmatched by the Panthers, plain and simple. So overall, I have Tennessee going 5-7, finishing in the bottom half of the SEC East. But that's okay. It's just the first year of Josh Heupel. We'll see some growth. And I do think Tennessee will be better in 2022. So for Pitt, that means I have them going 9-3. That's a pretty good record. I think they'll be battling Virginia for that 3rd spot. I think Pitt and Virginia will be the much improved teams, and they will battle it out right behind Miami and North Carolina. Could Pitt pull an upset over Miami at home? Yeah, it could happen. A 10-win season could happen. I'm sticking with 9-3 as of right now. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.